the Governor Hobbs, actually for the first time in Arizona history, signed a proclamation setting it aside too. So I think there's a momentum that's crossing party lines. Might be good to address. Yeah. Well, addressing the massive wave of anti-Semitism is going to take that sort of action. So pray it keeps being a bipartisan event.
I wish everybody a happy
Maimonides. It's a 12th, 11th century commentator. There's the famous Rambam that everyone knows about, but overlapping with him was another Sephardic commentator, Ramban, Nachmanides. And Rambam, he takes the rationalist, logical approach, and Ramban is more of the mystical, spiritual approach. And so reading his commentary on Bereshit, talking about the God stretching forth the divider between the expanse, right? The rakia, stretched forth. And looking at how he describes it, it's if you consider that idea that God stretched forth, that implies kind of lateral forces in physics. And if you really consider then this divider between the waters below and the waters above as the protective, more than just atmosphere, but the atmosphere around the earth and the magnetic field. Because the magnetic field is continuously, it's a stretching, if you will. There's a tension involved, right? The positive and negative, where positive and negative, repel one another, yet attract one another. So there's a built-in tension which implies a stretch, if you will. That wouldn't be a terrible word to describe it. So God stretching forth this rakia in the middle of it, and what you were just talking about with the sun sending blasts at it, and it's that magnetic field that allows us to live. We would be incinerated if it wasn't for it. The northern lights, when you see the beauty of the northern lights, know that, yeah, it's not even perceivable.
Percent of it, a percentage.
It's not even perceivable. It's just a subatomic level kind of force, and so when you see those northern lights, you know that you dodged a bullet. The shotgun blast at the earth, and it deflected it. It's our force field, our shields up, Mr. Sulu kind of thing, So, I think as the more you dig into the Bereshit, the Genesis story of creation, the more you see, it's not mythology. It's the actual reality. Everything else is mythology. This is the not mythology part. Oh yeah, sorry. You caught me droshing by the seat of my pants. I apologize. Let's go to the Lord in prayer, and then we will jump in. Blessed Lord our God, I thank you for this beautiful day, for this wonderful season. I thank you for the inspiration you are raining across the globe, Lord. I pray that many hearts will turn to you, will hear the call of the Holy Spirit, and turn to you, Lord. For our world is sick and in need of healing, and you have the great healer for us. Lord, I pray that you'll be with us this day as we dig into the words you left behind. Give us all ears to hear, minds to understand, and hearts willing to be transformed. And I pray this all b'Shem Yeshua. And before we go on, let's go ahead and say our traditional blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who blessed us with your commandments and commanded us to immerse ourselves in the words of the Torah. Adonai our God, please make pleasant the words of your Torah in our mouths and in the mouths of your people Israel and all those grafted into the tree of Israel. May we and our descendants and the descendants of your people, the whole house of Israel, all be perceivers of your name and students of your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to his people, Yisrael. Amen. All right, so in our annual cycle of Torah readings, we've come to Bamidbar, to Numbers in the wilderness, the fourth book of the Torah. Will you start us off? Oh, by the way, I'm sure I'll interrupt. This, of course, is the Torah portion that is just loaded with the repetitions of names and numbers, and I don't mean to minimize that at all. You should spend the time reading those specifically. I'll probably jump us through for the sake of time. There's a lot to talk about, but go ahead and get started for now. Real quick, this repetition of each one's has the name Livnei, like Simeon, and then it uses the terms Toldotam Lemishchatam of the bait of the fathers, of the house of the fathers. Toledot is a very interesting word. It implies generations. It can be often translated as generations, or lineage is a way to look at that. But it also has this sense of history and story behind it. So it is also possible to translate it as this is the story or the history of the ancestral house. It says his command is in verse 2, Se'u et rosh, kol adat b'nei Israel, lift the heads. Se'u et rosh, lift the heads of the entire adat Israel, the entire assembly of Israel. And this is really where Numbers starts off. Numbers is an amazing, most hopeful book. It starts off in hope. It's we've just completed the wilderness tabernacle. That took just chapter upon chapter upon chapter. It's a central focus of Exodus, ends up being that. And now it's done. And now God is mustering his army, if you will. And these are just the males, 20 to and up. So it doesn't count all the people younger than 20, and it doesn't count any of the women. So when we come to the end of this long list and we see 603,550, well, you've got to at least double that for wives, and then who knows how much more for children. So we're probably talking about 2 million people, and put that in your head. Again, as we were bantering about my former career in the Forest Service, and we muster a camp to fight a big fire like the Bighorn Fire you may have seen, and holy cow, that was a big operation. And when we were stumbling all over ourselves, the logistics of keeping a camp of 1,200 people. And with flowing water nearby, and with all the conveniences of Home Depot and whatnot, and anything we need. I mean, seriously, we send trips out. We're out of this. You go and buy material to keep a camp of 1,200 people working. And here's a camp in the Saudi deserts. And God is providing for them. They've come from a land of predictable water, next to a river where it overflows continuously. Yeah, they were slaves, but then they are suddenly out in Bamidbar, which is what this word actually means, what the book is named for, Bamidbar, into the desert wilderness. So pretty astounding. And so when you think about it, it is God beginning to lay down the story of the families of his people. And so he establishes that by counting their numbers, by specifically speaking of the heads of them, and then later on we're going to get a whole bunch of family information out of it. It's very important. God has put these records down. Each individual counts. That's what this says. Lift the heads. He's building his people. He's building the nation of priests. And what he's saying to us by recording this here is, every one of you is important to me. Don't think otherwise. So let's, I'll give you all a little break from the repetition. And let's pick up at next reader, verse 44, if you would, Judy.
These are the ones who were not.
Make a comment back on the outsider that comes in shall be put to death. That word is chazar. This is not the same word as the stranger who dwells among you. This is actually anyone not of Levi is the chazar. Don't go in there. Okay, continue.
And they know better.
Penchant for order here. This is a definite military alignment here. We're setting up camps. It'll have consequences later on. Be careful who you hang out with. Some later on in Numbers, when the wheels start falling off and we start seeing lots of problems, the adjacent camps, the calumnies will spread through them. So it's a blessing and a curse simultaneously. It's a difficult thing to maintain, but God is putting in as much order as he possibly can throughout the entire organization of the camp. One of the Midrash Rabbah, one of the great commentaries, I'll actually quote some from here later. It notes that you can't just count, 603,500 plus another 22,000 Levites all in one day. You really can't. The system that they had to use would have taken time. What they remark as a miracle among this is that it took approximately 20 days, according to them, to count the whole thing. And in that time, not a single Israelite died. Now, if you take 2 million people, a sampling of 2 million people, every day, there's going to be mortality. Every day, someone's going to die. But the sages remark that this was a miraculous event, that for the period of the accounting and the establishment, there was no death among them.
As above, so below. When I looked in Revelation 4, it talks about the throne room of God, and he's surrounded by 4 creatures that have a face of a lion, a face of an ox, a face of a man, and a face of an eagle.
Right.
And so it appears to me he's setting up.
It's it's the parallel on earth. Exactly. And the Lord of hosts, you get in when you see Isaiah's vision and Ezekiel's. Isaiah we say this is a critical part of the Shacharit morning prayers, that those across from them say, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord." There's There's an order in heaven. There's within his throne room, there's this group of heavenly beings over here, and they have a chorus to sing, and these over here, and they have a responsive chorus to sing. And I point this out in our men's prayer, which again, I'm going to encourage you, if you can, to come and please experience. I try to do a teaching and an introduction to Jewish prayer through this. So we don't do it precisely the way a typical minyan will do it, but it is a way of introducing it. And we have to realize that, as William was saying, as in heaven, so on earth. That's precisely what Yeshua said. So the camp was set up to mimic that throne room. So here in our prayers, we have to recognize that as we are joining in the chorus, it's at the same time. It is happening. There's no time in heaven. And so our voices are rising and joining in with that. So this will be in your own prayer life, if you can internalize that idea, absolutely internalize it. Not an abstraction, not some mysterious thing, but as much of a reality as the floor and the walls that you're standing in, is that you are, when you pray, participating in the heavenly service. Your voice is rising to that. And we seek to align our hearts with God so that our prayers will be aligned with his will. So don't fuss over whether or not he hasn't answered prayers or whatnot, but fuss rather over, is my heart aligned with his will? Which is often why, one more minute, which is often, if you will note in the Siddur, in Jewish prayer, it's very rarely in the first person singular. It's in the collective. It's the we, us and we. We pray collectively together. When we're praying collectively as us and we're less likely to be self-centered. We're more likely to have needed to humble ourselves, because each of these names, while they are important, while each individual is important, what he's telling us all here is this is the collective that I'm building. And each one of those individuals is a building block in it, just as Peter says, you are stones being built into a spiritual house. Yes?
I have a question. One pastor preached that when they camp, based on the number, their camp looks from above like a huge cross.
Yeah, I've seen that interpretation. We can't know. And so there's two ways of approaching Scripture. One is exegesis, letting the Scriptures themselves speak to us and what the specific words are saying. That's deriving from the text what it is saying. Eisegesis is the opposite. It's taking something that we expect or believe and pushing it back onto the text. It's not always a bad thing to do that, but the depictions that we can find in midrashic literature don't seem to fall out in that respect. They see a big group of people with, here's a section that has this one, and here's a section that has that one. And in our nice, neat, linear thinking, we like to look and say, wow, this would work. And then it would have that echo, right, of the cross. But I don't think we can actually say that that's there. I've heard many teachings like that, but I consider those to be eisegetic teachings that have put something back into the text that isn't necessarily there. So thank you for bringing that up. Let's continue reading.
3:1. These are the generations of
I'm sorry, where are we here? I was,
Talking about the priests. It's talking about the priests.
Mhm.
So my question is, and I know it's been explained to me a couple times, but I can't seem to get it in my head. Why was Pincus or Phineas not a priest until the event where he killed the?
do we have his name here? I may not be prepared to answer you properly on that. His name is not included in it?
No.
Well-
It's like there was a special dispensation for him because of his faith.
I'm sorry, William, I'm not prepared to respond to that, but I will make a note to research it. Let's jump ahead a little bit and go to chapter 3, verse 38 next. Prior to this time, then, the expectation of God was that the firstborn son of every household was to function in the priestly function. They were the ones to give the offerings. They had that priestly role within it. But here he's now taken the Levites in their place, so they are set apart. But there's more firstborn sons than there are Levites, so they have to have the shekalim, the redemption of the firstborn has to happen, and what that does is now establishes the beginnings of an account for the wilderness tabernacle. But it's not just the Levites themselves, it's also the cattle. So whereas a firstborn son prior to this would be expected to take the firstborn of their family's flock and bring that as an offering, now it is the Levites' livestock are the source of offerings. So the source of, firstborn offerings, let's put it that way. They will be the source of all the offerings by, for national offerings. Yes?
That 5 shekels was also part of Leviticus 27,
Mm-hmm.
which is the redemption of vowed persons,
Persons vowed, yeah.
of vowed babies, I'm sorry.
Right.
So this matches first chapter 27 on redeeming vowed people.
And if you don't redeem them, then they belong to the Lord. And that plays a big role in the story of the founding of our Messiah, because Samuel's mother, Hannah, refused, she did not pay the redemption price, therefore she lent her son to the Lord. So even though Shmuel was not a Levite, was not of that tribe, nevertheless, he became property of God and dwelt in the temple, the tabernacle, and functioned as a priest. In fact, the leader of Israel who would anoint the first king and who would anoint David. So all these little connections that are wonderful here. Let's go ahead and stop there for a second. And
I have a question.
yes, sir.
I just find it interesting that all the numbers that we talked about and read about, most of them, all of them were up to this, before the firstborn count, they're all pretty much exactly.
Even numbers, right?
And then
all of a sudden we have that.
numbers. Why is that?
I bet there's a wonderful drosh in there somewhere. God's plan, God's intervention in the lives of men. I myself don't delve too deeply into numerology, which is there's a place for the numerological interpretations. I don't say there isn't. It's just that you can get wrapped around the axle pretty easily with it if you're not well done. The thing we call numerology has its source in assigning each letter of the Hebrew alphabet to a numerical value. The reason to do that was to be able to have an independent check on the copying of a Torah scroll. Whereas if we write something, you know that you can have many editors look at something and you'll still have a published book that has an error in it. By assigning a number to a letter, then you turned it into a mathematical test. And so there are source sheets, source folia for a Torah scroll, that along the whole column on the side of each line has the numerical value of adding up all the values of all the letters in that. And so when a sefer scribe, sefer literally means counting, a counting scribe makes his copy of the Torah, then another one comes in and does the math. And if the math doesn't line up, then there's an error on that line. And so that's the start and the foundation of numerology. In the course of scribes studying that, they started to recognize relationships between words of numeric value, similar numeric value. And so that part of the study began to expand. But it's been taken again to ridiculous extremes, being applied to other languages, being applied to English. You know, you'll hear. I mean, back in the day, right? They were saying Ronald Reagan. That's 666. Ronald Wilson Reagan. I mean, no, you don't apply it. Don't apply the Sefer scribe thing to English. It's not going to work.
I wasn't necessarily
No,
into numerically that.
Yeah.
My question is.
Why would it be an even number of children and then?
Every
Yeah.
tribe had exactly even numbers.
And I just gave a sidestep of I have no idea. But it's a remarkable thing. And so I guess here's the connection to what I said. There is a possibility that you might be able to find some meaning in the number 273. It's numerically equivalent to some word, I'm sure. I don't know which it is. So you might be able to find a connection if, with diligence and without going into the wacky world, you looked to see what the numeric value of various words 273 were. So that's the closest I could get to an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want a real weird one?
Sure.
273 is the sum of 153 plus 120.
So the number of the big fish caught in the net and the number of the years of mankind. That could be fun. See, it's very tempting to do stuff like that, but let's I like to rein that in. All right, listen. So the wilderness, this thing starts off with great positivity. We're counting all the people. We're seeing this amazing host that God brought out of Egypt. We've built the tabernacle, so we now have the outpost of God on earth and his people, and as we pointed out, right, he's arranging them in a manner that reflects heaven where he's at. This, you can't get any clearer message than this is God's will for planet Earth. He didn't call everyone, but he picked these people, and he's making this model of heaven on earth. And so he's training them in the wilderness, right? And we've been going through that. We're in this fourth book of the 5 books of Moses. But the salvation of Israel from Egypt began in Exodus. I always make the joke, I call it, right, the wilderness yeshiva, or the wilderness school is what this was. It was a 40-year graduate program in the wilderness. And you might look on it then as, Exodus equivalent to your freshman year, Leviticus your sophomore year, now you're into the junior year of Numbers. And I don't know if you raised, how recent your memory of raising teenagers was, but wow, junior year was hard, right?
It's a long year.
Junior year is hard because they thought they saw the end, but then they realized how far away the end actually is, and they start losing their motivation, and that's when you start having some train wrecks. And that, yeah, I remember those. And anyway, and so really, that's what we see in Numbers. I'm being kind of a little tongue-in-cheek here, but Numbers starts off very hopeful. We've established their role, what's going to happen. Everybody's got everything, and then right after we get through these first few chapters, then it's going to fall apart. We're going to have rebellion. We're going to have people being swallowed up by the earth. We're going to have Zerat cast on Miriam. It's going to get pretty rough, and ultimately it gets so rough.
Are they numbering all the fighting men?
Yeah, pardon me?
All the fighting men.
Yeah, then all the fighting men, because they listened to eventually we're going to hear about the spies and the calumnies, and they listened to it. So these 603,550 have to perish in the wilderness. So, take this and go, wow, we're just learning all these, but now they're not going to get to enter the promised land because of the calumnies of the spies, the regalim.
They
So,
want to graduate, they get to walk around the desert.
right, so not so good. Nevertheless, it's this is a story that is intended for us, right? Completely intended for us.
Speaking of Numbers 42, this speaks of the 42 places that they camped.
They camp, right? There's 42, right?
The sages seem to align that with various aspects of our own life, that we have these
42 gates to go through.
we have to go through.
Yeah, 6 times 7. I'm gonna resist that one. Okay, I'm gonna resist that one. I really will. It's fantastic. But here's what I'd like to point out for us. I point this out a lot, but I was going to read it for you today. So Paul looks on this, and he speaks about. He uses the events of the book of Numbers in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 as an example for us. And what he says is, "For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers," starting at verse 10, "that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Mashiach. Nevertheless, with most of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us." That's a key here. These things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose to play. Now there he's referring back to the golden calf incident in Exodus. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. And now we're at the Pinchas part that you were talking about. We must not put Mashiach to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents. So remember, now he's referring to the fiery serpents, and there's where that image of Yeshua. Yeshua even said, "I'm like this." the serpent on the pole in the wilderness. Nor grumble as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. There's a lot of grumbling and a lot of dying in here. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the age has come. So these are for us. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. You see, in the first paragraph, they all ate the same spiritual food. They all drank from the rock. They all, the analogy is here, let's look at the believers in the world right now and don't think we've got it all handled, because we are as vulnerable as they were.
Paul's
No.
the Talmud here.
Well, I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest you fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. In other words, you're going to be in the same boat as them. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure. As William is talking about, here is this first part. You've been studying the Torah. Some of you, we've been through this several times, right? We have never once seen in the Torah the idea that Miriam's well followed them around. You can look to the Torah all you want and you will never find that. But here is Midrash Rabbah. Midrash Rabbah on Bamidbar 1. Now, the great Midrash Rabbah, was not written down until the 6th century CE. So 600 years. So now here's where I'm going to once again pose a challenge to our Western way of thinking. We think that the moment something is published, that's when it's established, right? We never think about the fact that, say, for instance, let's pick an American tradition. George Washington, and when he was a child, and the axe. I cannot tell a lie, right? We all know the story. It's an American oral tradition. But at some point it was written down, and it wasn't written down until the mid-1800s. Does that mean that George Washington's little thing happened in the mid-1800s? Of course not. We're talking about George Washington. It happened when he was a child in the 1700s. So we actually have the ability to expand our minds and to understand that something written down can actually have its origin in an oral tradition far before that. So Midrash Rabbah, written in the 6th century, captures the oral traditions of a people who were focused on oral traditions. They were really good at it. Rooms like this, the rabbi would sit and say things, and they would memorize what he said, and everybody would memorize it. And then if someone went to repeat it later and they got something wrong, everyone would go, he didn't say that. He said this, and they would fix it. And that's how oral transmission is actually more accurate than written, because as I said, you can write something down and get a bunch of editors through it, and if there's a typo in there, all our eyes will overlook it. But our ears are more discerning. So with that all said, I'm going to read to you out of Midrash Rabbah 1, keeping in mind what Paul said, that this spiritual rock, which was Messiah, followed them, and the rock was Messiah. So it says, when Aaron departed, what is written? The spirit of the people became restive on the way, Numbers 21:4. And as the sun was beating down on them, the well was due to the merit of Miriam. What is written? Miriam died there and was buried there, Numbers 20. What they're referring to is the well was entirely on the merit of Miriam, because the well was there as long as Miriam was alive, but the day she died, the well went away. The well stopped. So keeping going here. What is written thereafter? There was no water for the congregation after Miriam died. Numbers 22. Of what was the well constituted, they ask. It was a boulder. It was like a beehive, and it would roll and come with them on their journeys. When the banners would encamp and the tabernacle would stand, that boulder would come and settle in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. The princes would stand over it and say, "Arise, O well," Numbers 21:17, the song that was sung over it. "Then I brought you the quails," etc. So here we see Paul, right? Saint Paul, no, Rabbi Shaul, who's deeply ensconced in Jewish tradition, is teaching in Corinthians Jewish tradition. He's a rabbi teaching rabbinical things in his letters. He's clearly, if you want to talk about publication dates and you want to know that Midrash Rabbah is from a much earlier time, well, look at the letter to the Corinthians. It's the first documented written record of this midrashic tradition that's all part of oral tradition. And I guess what I'm arguing again is we're in the Christian world, we've been pretty quick to forget, to not even want to look at all of those rabbinic writings. Many horrific anti-Semites have said they're the writings of the devil, and they've gathered the Talmud by truckloads and burned them publicly, and not ever realizing that the foundation of their own faith is right in those texts that they're burning. So it's my mission to try to make sure that we understand the Jewishness of Yeshua and Paul and all of his apostles, and that's why I harp on these things, so that we can bring these things back, because we share so much more in common than we have in difference. And I think that's critical to understand, especially today, since we're recognizing a national Sabbath for all people. I think it's important for us to seek that sort of unity.
Messiah says he's the Lord of the Sabbath.
Exactly. The Lord of the Sabbath. So what's the Lord's day? Shabbat. Shabbat. Nothing else. It's Shabbat. Let's see if we could find Hebrews as another remarkable one. Incidentally, when you go into your Bibles and you're going to start looking at things like Peter, John, James, and Hebrews, where do you go? To the very end, right? Stuck right at the end. Do you know that there's 3 ancient codices of the New Testament? Only one of them has them in that order. The other 2 have Peter, James, John, and Hebrews as the very first thing after Acts. So you would read all that, and then you'd get to the Pauline letters. So kind of an interesting, I don't know. Make of that what you will. Let's just put it that way. I hope I'm going to be able to find this. I apologize. I don't do this very well on the hoof. Chapter 4 of the book of Hebrews, starting at verse 1. Verse 1. Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. For we also have the gospel preached to us just as they did. He's, of course, referring to the wilderness generation. We have the good news preached to us just as they did. Does that make sense? Do you think that Moses sat up there and preached on Jesus? We don't have that as record. The good news is being in covenant and following God. That's the good news. You have a path to being in covenant with him. But the message they heard was of no value to them, because those who heard it did not combine it with faith. Now we who have believed enter that rest, just as God had said. So I declared on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. And yet his work has been finished since the creation of the world. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in these words, and on the seventh day God rested from all his work. And again in the passage above, they shall never enter my rest. It still remains that some will enter that rest. And those who formerly had the gospel preached to them did not go in because of their disobedience. Therefore, God again set a certain day, calling it today, when a long time later he spoke through David. Listen, this is hyperbole. Did everyone not enter into that rest? All the women did.
We need it.
All the second generation did. He's saying that the wilderness camp was Besora, was good news. I've got my hands, she says, shut up. Just kidding. Yeah, it's time. I know. So the point is, when we look at Hebrews, we come to understand that the same opportunity of closeness to God and obedience to God has been given through Yeshua. It's the opportunity, the obedience, the offer was given to the children of Israel. And 603,000 of the 2 million didn't accept that with faith. But the remainder did and entered that rest, entered the promised land, you see. So this is used, interpreted as a condemnation of the Jewish people as a whole. See, they didn't believe it. They're condemned. They're gone, forgotten. But that's not correct. That's not the way the wording was done. Paul and whoever wrote Hebrews, some say Paul, some say Apollos, were trying to make the point that Numbers is for us a warning. We need to read through this and don't do what I did to you today, skipping the names. Read it in detail and look for connections as best you can, because it's a good warning for us. How am I going to react when someone brings calumnies like the spies? How am I going to react when I see leadership of among believers battling it out? Am I going to go with the rebellion, or am I going to cleave to God? These are a lot of things that we can take from this.
Messiah himself said that, it's that the way is narrow
And difficult the path.
and that there's a remnant that will come. There was a remnant then, and there's a remnant now as we're waiting for his return.
And there's those gates again. Narrow is the gate.
Narrow is the good.
It is each one. It's a very deep mystical Jewish understanding to gates, entering into gates. It's a transition in your understanding. You have to keep seeking for it. As he said, knock and it will be open for you. So let's take that all to heart. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Blessed Lord our God, we thank you for the lessons you left us. And Lord, a portion of our heart breaks for those that did not receive the Besora with faith and had to perish in the wilderness. But Lord, we pray that you will open our hearts to understand that we too face the same risks each and every day. I pray you will help us to enter through the narrow gate, to not go with the flow of the masses in the easy way that leads to destruction, but instead to always see what is before us and measure it against your word. Lord, give us discerning hearts and help us to cling to you continuously. And I pray this all, B'Shem Yeshua. Amen.